Miner with Swiss America.
Some of you who were here yesterday got to listen to me say a couple things. So I'm on a 3 to 4 minute time log here, so I don't want to go too far. If you're at the luncheon, you'll hear a little bit about my history. As I said yesterday, it's all a bunch of lies. But, you know, we talked yesterday a little bit, and I've said to you what we do at Swiss America. We're the oldest and probably one of the largest precious metals, gold, and silver companies in the United States. At the end of the day, people come up to me and they all want to know about what do I think the gold market's going to do. I learned about two things when I used to do a TV show years ago with a guy named Louis Rukeyser called Wall Street Week. Used to be on Friday nights. He used to call me the gold bug. And I used to say I had two theories of investing, the WAG theory and the swag theory, the wild-ass guess and the sophisticated wild-ass guess. So, you know, if you want to ask me what it's done, let me put it to you this way. I probably forgot more than most of them think they know. I've been in it since the market opened. But what we deal with at Swiss America is twofold. Not only talking about making money, because as a situation, gold and silver has outperformed anything. When I started off in 1974, gold was $34, $35 an ounce. It's gone up 60 times in value. What comes close to that? Okay? So if it's about making money, wonderful. What we deal with is what this country was formed by. I told you yesterday that it's not a day that I don't wake up and don't recognize this country. Today was nothing different. I got up again and I listened to the news, which I agree with the president. And I know Jeannie wanted me to mention this, but I sit on the advisory board. I've known President Trump since 1978. He's a very good person. He's not an evil, angry, he's a fun guy. If you're a guy, he's like the guy you like to go watch a football game with, really. He's a great guy, but brilliant, absolutely shockingly brilliant and caring. Very good guy. But at the end of the day, first thing on the news today, Jussie Smollett, which was a lie to everyone, not just no matter black, white, yellow, blue, doesn't matter. And what do they want to do? Well, indirectly, it's Donald Trump's fault. If your toilet doesn't work tomorrow morning, it's Donald Trump's fault, okay? Take it from there. Reality is what he has given you is the ability to still protect yourself. What we do, and I suggest you come by our table and fill out a card. We don't just try to sell you gold. We try to work with you on asset preservation. And this is a wake-up call. This country was formed under gold and silver. For 200 years, you lived that way. We had no debt. Nobody owed anybody any money. You didn't have to worry when you shook somebody's hand because they paid their bills. Being a bankruptcy lawyer when I was in law school was like being a whirlpool repairman. You had nothing to do. Now it's a great career because if I owe him money, I don't have to pay him. I just file bankruptcy and don't. Lying has become the more acceptable thing to do right now. And goodness knows, under the former administration, being a Christian was a bad thing. So, you know, right now the president's given you one opportunity, and that's to protect yourself. If you're interested in learning how to preserve and protect your portfolio, we can help you. You don't have to necessarily do business. Come over to our table. I've dealt with another gentleman who I consider to be in awe of, and I'll mention it when I'm at the luncheon. If you go to the luncheon today, I'll go into a lot of details. But I met him in 1986 when he created the Gold IRA program, and his name was Ronald Reagan. Another guy who was under attack during his entire presidency because he was an outsider. What a guy. I was speechless when I met him. Couldn't talk, I was embarrassed. I don't want to go into the story now, but it was unbelievable. And I had the ability to work with his family. And Mrs. Reagan was one of the sweetest ladies I've ever met in my life. Nice, warm, and they called her an evil witch. Sound familiar? So at the end of the day, if you want to get some help and you want to talk about it, don't just talk about making money in gold. Talk about how do you protect your estate, because don't react, act. We can help you. And I'll leave you with this. The United States of America, and being somebody that did have a, don't hold it against me, I did go to law school. I never practiced law. I decided it was more fun to do something else. But at the end of the day, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, wasn't to bear arms against foreign entities. It was a right to bear arms against the people running the country. Freedom of speech was freedom of speech not against outsiders, but the people running the country. That is what is really interesting right now. And the final thing I'll say to you is my son, I have one son, I have 5 sons, and all of them done well. They grow up and left, which was great. And one of them is in law enforcement. And what really sickens me is when I listen to the press go against police officers and people in law enforcement and ICE people who get up every single day and put their life on the line for this country, and at the end of the day, they're being villainized in the press. It's disgusting, literally. But listen, if you really want to come over and talk to us, I don't get the ability in life to talk to as many people as I'd like to, and God knows I got a big mouth, as you can see, but if you would like, come by, fill out a card, and we'll spend some time thinking about it and talking about how we could help you. Thank you very much.
One correction for Mike, you're not allowed to cuss on stage.
Oh, sorry.
You said Jesse Smollett.
Oh.
Just saying. Okay, I'm sorry, Lord. I know I need to forgive him in time, right? Is that okay? Are we allowed? Well, I have the blessing and honor to introduce our next speaker, and he is absolutely one of my favorite authors. I've been following him for years. I've seen pretty much most of his videos. I'm excited about his next one coming out, like literally. But he's an author, lecturer, filmmaker, book writer. He's written tons of books, but the Nephilim trilogy, he lectures on everything from UFOs to Nephilim to fallen angels to giants, all the stuff that the church doesn't typically name. He is host of the PPS report, Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural. Would you please give a warm welcome to our Italian friend, L.A. Marzulli.
Wow, you guys are already standing up. Unbelievable. Sit down, I haven't done anything yet. All right, my name is L.A. Marzulli, and we were getting feedback. I've written 13 books, 14 is in the oven, and produced a bunch of films, yak all over the place. We yacked on the island of Malta, which was incredible. I did 2 nights there to pretty much of a packed house. 9 people were saved, and Malta's in the Mediterranean. I was like, what are we doing there? But it was an honor, and it was really cool. I just want to thank all of you who helped us with the fire relief. We were in this building at the John B. Wells Conference, and we watched the fire. We were in communication with our daughter and other people when we found out that the fire had completely decimated, everything. And in the back of my head, I'm going, well, maybe the guest house or something is still intact. And it took us about 5 or 6 days because they wouldn't let anybody in there, and that's a 3-hour conversation. But when we got there, this is basically what we saw. Why aren't you guys showing anything? Oh, Houston, we've got a big problem. There we go, okay. So let's start over. Not afraid to do it. Okay, here we go. That makes sense, right? L.A. Marzulli, books, DVDs, yakking. Good, now you're up to speed. But I just want to thank you all. That's a shot from the upper part. We used to be able to look down the canyon and see blue water ocean. I was there since 1987 is when I moved there. And it was out in the middle of nowhere in an undisclosed location in the Santa Monica Mountains. So, God has moved us out, and we're in a new place in Edmond, Oklahoma. He's restored us. Yes, sir. I'm going armadillo hunting tomorrow, I'll tell you right now. Nothing better than armadillo meatloaf with gravy. Anyway, we're loving it there. It's really cool, and we drove here. No more LAX. No more people in California have always been good partners. But, so we're out of the liberal nonsense of California. But look, I've only got like an hour and a half, so I better get to it. This is basically, this presentation is on the mysteries of the Moundbuilders. And you say, L.A., what does this have to do with Jesus? Look, this isn't a salvation message. Most of you who are in here already know the Lord, right? So we don't need to go over salvation again. We don't. Now we've got to go into other stuff, like what Coach was talking about, and some of the other speakers. But right under our noses in this country is what I believe is Nephilim architecture. And I'm gonna try to prove it to you this morning. And I hope when you see it, when you see the embedded mathematics, when you understand that you can only see many of these edifices from the air, it's gonna grab your attention. And it's hidden in plain sight. Why am I so passionate about this? Because the Darwinists and the archaeologists and the anthropologists, who for the most part, are Darwinists, okay? Who don't believe in the Bible, who don't believe in the supernatural, who don't believe in God. Everything just evolved by chance, randomly over billions and billions of years. As Christians, we don't believe that. But that worldview, the Darwinian paradigm, is sacrosanct, is held in the highest esteem in all of our halls of learning. And so if you're a Christian and you want to be an archaeologist, you've got to toe the party line. And so they spit out these little guys who have just essentially been brainwashed, and they're told the same thing. And so then they become the docents and the curators of the museums, and they just spew the party line. That Native Americans built all the mounds. I'm here to tell you, first of all, that Native Americans did not do this, and this is not to disparage them in any way, First Nation people. We're not bagging on them. They say themselves, and you'll hear from Chief Joseph Riverwind, that they even say that they didn't do it. So who did? We've got advanced trigonometry, advanced geometry, which are embedded in these mounds. And that, to me, points back to the Nephilim. And the whole idea of this is we're on the trail of a Nephilim. It's a whole series. So the first one's out, the second one's coming out. We've got order forms back there. It's actually at the duplicator office. We'll have it in about 2 to 3 weeks. So we got a show special. If you're interested, go back there, talk to the wifey, and she'll sign you up. But the bottom line is something is going on here. There's a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated for the American people and the peoples of the world. So why are we on the trail of a Nephilim? Because we believe, first of all, that there were multiple incursions. We believe that they were in Israel. And that's why when Joshua and Caleb get that mandate from a loving, holy God to go in and wipe out men, women, children, animals, burn everything. That is genocide. That is maniacal. That is homicidal. That is capricious. How do we reconcile the God of the Old Testament with the God of the New? Oh, the God of the Old Testament is this wrathful, vengeance God. Smite them. That's not what we're looking at. But the moment we plug in the Nephilim and we realize that the Nephilim are the hybrid being of a union between the fallen angels and the women of earth, everything becomes clear. And this is why the mandate goes out to wipe them out. They're not human. They're soulless. They're hybrid entities. They were cannibalistic. They were sexually deviant in ways that I won't get into up here. But it's just unbelievable what they did. And our premise is they fled the Levant. They set up shop in other places. And as you'll see, as you hang with me for about an hour and a half, this is why I'm so passionate about it. Because the true history of the world has been obfuscated, deliberately hidden from you and from me. And with that, we need some volume. Try it again. Okay, I'm going to run a video here. And here we go, video. No sound. Okay, it did work before. Lord, please. No sound, guys. That's me on Machu Picchu, by the way. Try it again. Why are we not getting sound? Because I got a lot of embedded videos here, guys. Don't you love this? We break from our normal presentation because of technical difficulties. So a rabbi, a priest, and a minister go into a bar. If you think I'm going to stand up here and do stand-up, you guys are crazy. No sound, guys. And the clock is ticking. We've only got an hour and 25 minutes left, LA. I suggest you get on with it. So there I am yakking up on Machu Picchu. And we are going to Peru, hopefully in 2020. And if you haven't signed up for the tour, we haven't announced it yet, but we go there. And when you're there, I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling. Why, am I hosed here or what? Somebody please say something. They're all ducking behind monitors. What's going on here? But we are going in 2020, and we go to places like the Paracas History Museum with the elongated skulls. We go to Sacsayhuaman, and Sacsayhuaman has got the largest stones on the planet which are actually hewn together. It's just incredible. And no one knows who did it. Of course, we think it's the giants. And now we have a pause from Don, who hopefully will rescue us momentarily. Okay, you good? Preferences. Sound right there.
Come on. Display port doesn't.
Headphone port, right? Up. You're good.
That should be good.
That's it. You're good. Just get out of it.
Out. It's not closing out.
Well, you wouldn't be on right now, right? Oh, it's not going away.
Yeah, exactly.
There it is. Okay. So just hit the arrow there.
The Genesis 6
Okay.
narrative states that the Nephilim are
Thank
on
you,
the earth
Don.
in those days and also afterwards.
We're not worthy. It's always one button somewhere. Okay, here we go.
The Genesis 6 narrative states that the Nephilim are on the earth in those days and also afterwards.
Father, we come before you in Jesus' name, and we ask that the enemy would quit screwing around with us up here, and we proclaim in his name that everything will go smooth from here on out. In Yeshua's mighty name we pray.
The Genesis 6 narrative states that the Nephilim are on the earth in those days and also afterwards. If that's true, can we find evidence that corroborates this? I'm L.A. Marzulli. Join me as we go on the trail of the Nephilim.
So what we're hoping for here is about 20 or 30 films because there's so much to cover. And you know what? The reason why I'm doing this, how many people watch Ancient Aliens every Friday night? I have to because it's part of what I do. So I try to watch it. I try to stay up with it. They've taken complete control over the narrative. It's all ancient astronauts. Well, yeah, I get that. We all agree that something's going on the planet. But what is it really? Is it really ancient astronauts from Zeta Reticuli, or is it the Nephilim and the fallen angels? That's why we're pushing back with the film series. So like I said, 1 is out, 2 will come out in 2 to 3 weeks. We are in post-production on number 3, and I hope to have that out by the end of May. The goal, 3, 4, 5 films a year. So we're into it. So this is Mathematical Mysteries of the Moundbuilders. That's the new one. Our mission statement: to expose the deception of the prince of the power of the air and to herald the return of the King Jesus. This is what it's all about. This is what drives us. This is our marching orders. This is our mission statement. So, 2 millennia ago, a culture that is still unknown to us today erected thousands of mounds throughout the Midwestern United States to the Gulf of Mexico. They are called the Hopewell, the Adena, or the Mississippian. However, no one knows what these people actually called themselves. In other words, they remain mysterious and unknown to us today. When the first white settlers came into the Great Circle Mound in Ohio, they asked the Native Americans living there, who built this? The natives replied that they didn't know who built them, as these large mounds were there and abandoned when they arrived. The discovery of these mounds created a controversy, as some posited the mounds were built by an unknown lost tribe of people, who migrated perhaps from the old world. Others thought they could be one of the lost tribes of Israel. The debate continued until the late part of the 19th century, when the conclusion was made that Native Americans had built the mounds, but they had simply forgotten they had done so. Scouts honor. That's the prevailing paradigm. That's what we're supposed to believe. Thank you, Cyrus Thomas. This is now the accepted paradigm. However, is it the truth of what occurred in the ancient past, or has the information been managed to bolster a particular narrative? Join us as we explore the mysterious mound builders. Look, I get stuff in the mail. I get emails from people all the time. It is like the real X-Files. LA, I think I have an implant. LA, I saw a UFO. LA, I was abducted last night. LA, my grandfather had a Nephilim skull, but we threw it out. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And my wife and I look at each other, sometimes we can't even believe what the Lord has us doing. And it's, you know, look, here are my roots, just real quick, 30 seconds, okay? The clock is ticking, LA. How come I went from 1 hour 25 to 1 hour 08? Somebody's doing some awful funny math up here. Anyway, so when I was like 13, the Beatles came out, the whole deal, and Eastern mysticism, all the occult activity. Russ will talk about this probably later. The greatest influx of occult books came in the 60s. Drugs, mescaline. Yes, I inhaled as deeply as I possibly could. I went to Woodstock. I dropped LSD. I did peyote. I had spirit guides. I had a guru. I was deep, 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 deep into it. And at 30 years old, after becoming an agnostic and stopping all that stuff and just going, I'm done with God. There is no God. I've had it. I was reading a book by Dave Hunt, and I gave my life to Jesus. And I kind of went, if you're real, come in. But if you're not, I don't care. And he came in. And that's, right? And that's 39 years ago. So guess what? He's got me as an apologist for everything that I came out of. We were just at a UFO conference, UFO MegaCon, 150 people there, but I digress. MegaCon, Laughlin, Nevada. And, I got to say in front of all these UFO guys with spirit guides and the whole deal, I said, well, I was at the operating theater and my spirit guide tapped me on the shoulder. And I just start laughing because my spirit guide is the Holy Spirit. But it's not what they think, right? So I can talk in a language that they understand. And we, no one, there was no altar call, but we changed people's paradigm. Anyway, that's what I do. So we get this email from this guy, and in the 50s, the Berger family was out on this little island in Florida called Tick Island. It was a huge shell midden. The midden is like a trash pile. And they're out there digging for artifacts, and they find all sorts of artifacts. They also have 8mm film, which he has never seen. They send me the original film, go figure, right? And I send it over to a place in Hollywood, and they digitize it. And I'm sitting there like holding my breath frame by frame to see what they had. Why? Because they told me, and he swears on this, he comes on the film and talks about it, that they discovered, and they didn't know at the time, they knew nothing about Nephilim, they discovered a graveyard in that midden mound, with 10-footers. Yeah. But his mother held the camera, and she didn't see anything interesting about that. So we didn't get that. But what we did get on Tick Island, and I'll show you in a second. So the Bilger family pastime, Indian hunting relics. This is one that came out of one of the mounds, about a 7.5-footer. Watch this real carefully, because it goes by real quick. The archaeologist will turn, this was the pay dirt. The archaeologist turns, it's in a trench which he's dug. He turns around, he's got a brush, and you'll see him brush an elongated skull. Here it goes. Right, there it is. See it? So, what is that? To me, that's like pay dirt. Something is going on here. And it also, now, is that cradle deformation, cradle headboarding, where they actually wrap a child's head, and we don't know that because we couldn't handle the skull. But the fact that there were 10-footers, and he squares it, he says it on the record that one of the thigh bones, the femur bone, came up to his waist. Now, he's a child of about 8, 9, 10 years old, but it still comes up to his waist. So let's say it's like this. Let's say it's 30 inches. That's huge. That's at least a 9-footer. So something is going on. And it was amazing when the archaeologists, they tried to tell him where the good stuff was, the archaeologist wasn't interested in it. And he just, did this and dug up all these particular skeletons. Who is the prince of the power of the air? This is the place. Turn down the volume on this one because it'll have guitar stuff on it. Just turn down the volume completely on it. And this is a Serpent mound in Ohio. I've been there 3 different times. It is a highly charged area. And here's the deal. When you go into a place like this, you never, ever, ever walk in without being prayed up. And when you walk out, you pray up again. And you ask that anything that might be coming up from the ground be cast off from you. And you say that before and after you go in. These sites are highly charged. Henry Groover went into this. We're trying to get him on the record. Henry Groover went into this site, and he was not told by the Lord to do that. He was struck down, struck down on the mound. He can't move. He's paralyzed for like an hour. And then it starts snowing. Who is the prince of the power of the air? Why the snowstorm appearing out of nowhere? How was he struck down? When we were there on the spring equinox, there was a coven of witches who were doing their stuff. They know exactly who it is that's doing this. Notice that you can only see what this is from the air. And there's a new paradigm which we talk about in the film, that the serpent, and you'll show the head here in just a second, but the serpent is in the act of swallowing an egg. And what is that? Genesis 3:15. The seed of a serpent will be at enmity, at war with the seed of the woman. The offspring of the serpent will be at war with the offspring of the woman. He, the Messiah, will crush your head, crush the dragon's head. You will bruise his heel. You can see right there, the serpent's mouth is open, and in front of it is an egg. No one has ever written about that till we got there, because the New Agers had control of a narrative. Oh, the serpent denotes wisdom and is in the act of giving wisdom to mankind. Horsepucky. That's not what's going on here. It hails back to Genesis 3:15. And why is it that when you're down in the serpent mound, you don't know what the heck you're looking at? You have no clue. I've been here 3 times. Well, it looks like something's undulating. It looks like a serpent. You can't see it until you're high above. There's a great shot of the serpent's mouth opening and destroying the egg. That's a new interpretation, a new paradigm based on the biblical prophetic narrative, based on the idea that all these sites are actually Nephilim sites. And, you know, if it's not, what are we looking at? And the new signage at the Serpent Mound says, the Shawnee built them. We have on the record a quote from the Shawnee chief herself, and Chief Joseph will address this a little later, who basically states that the Shawnee didn't build them. She says it right in print. The Shawnee did not build the Serpent Mound. Yet, archaeologists, mainstream archaeologists, who have this whole thing, Native Americans built them, but they just forgot that they did. That's the paradigm. And now when you go there, new signage, oh, the Shawnee built them, where the Shawnee say specifically, we had nothing to do with this. It was here before we got here. So who is the prince of the power of the air? And why is it that you can only see, this is the largest serpent iconography on the planet, by the way, right near Peebles, Ohio. Why is it that you can only see it from the air? Who is the prince of the power of the air? What is our mission statement? To expose the deception of the prince of the power of the air. What are we doing right now? Exposing a deception. Because people go there and they have no idea what this site is. And mainstream archaeologists has certainly not linked it back to the biblical prophetic narrative, but we just did right here. It screams, Genesis 3:15, that the serpent will destroy the seed of the woman, will eat the egg, eat the seed. So Messiah will not be born. And that's what happens in Genesis 6. And Ryan Peterson's tables here, if you haven't gotten this book, it's an amazing, amazing tome. Check it out. On the Nephilim. But that's what's going on here. There's a hidden history. And because we have the truth in the Bible tells us exactly what's happening. That the serpent is doing this. It all goes back to Genesis 3:15. And if we don't have a good understanding of Genesis 3:15, we are clueless when we get to Genesis 6 and the flood. Then God becomes this vengeful, weird God that wipes everybody out. No, when we understand that the fallen angels have completely contaminated, completely corrupted the human genome, so Messiah will never be born. Only 8 people were saved. Only 8 people were saved. And then later on, the Tower of Babel, something happens there. Something happens to Sodom and Gomorrah. Finally, when we get to the Promised Land, we get that mandate, wipe everybody out. If we don't understand that there's a seed war going on because the fallen cherub, the dragon, I prefer to call him a dragon because that's really what he is. Because the dragon does not want the person who was going to crush his head to be on the planet. That's what's going on. We are in the midst of a war. So all this is to show us what's happened in the past and make us realize and wake up that we are at war and do something about it. Let's move on. Another shot of the serpent. We can see the summer solstices, all the different alignments, the equinoxes. And Native Americans knew some of this, but they didn't make edifices like this. And that's why Chief Wallace of the Shawnee basically stated on the record that we did not build the Serpent Mound. Cahokia is the largest mound in North America. It's upwards of 500 tons of earth. And again, the archaeologists insist, and I love the way they fudge the dates. First they say, well, it took 300 years to build. And then somebody actually does some work in realizing the layers and the pollen and all this stuff. It's more like 20 years. But we don't even know there's 20 years. We have no idea. There's a 40-acre plaza that's in front of this mound. 40-acre plaza. It is almost dead level within 2 inches. How do you do that in antiquity? See what we're looking at here? The largest mound, and this is only one mound of the thousands of mounds which are in America. So, and this is what we're going to be getting into. And how do you make this fascinating out of earth? Look, they built with stone before the flood. Sacsayhuaman in Peru. Huge megalithic stones. Then we get that little scripture at the Tower of Babel, very telling. They built with brick instead of stone, because the technology that they had to make these incredible stoneworks that we see in Sacsayhuaman in Ollantaytambo in Peru was gone. It was no longer on the planet. Now they're building with earth. And they set up shop and they do it over and over and over and over again. It's supernatural. This is another shot, an aerial view of what Cahokia looked like in the day. You can see that level playing field, that level plaza, which is about 40 acres in front of the mound. How do you do that without a transit, without earth-moving machines? You know what they tell us? They tell us that they used flint hose, and you'll see that in just a minute. And they used flint hose. Okay, so how did they make it level? How do you know? You can do it today with modern equipment, but my gosh, within 2 inches, are you kidding me? And we've got lasers and transits and all this other stuff, and satellite GPS coordinates. They had none of this, and yet the thing is dead level within 2 inches. This is Poverty Point, 390,000 tons of earth. By the way, I've been to all these sites. They're phenomenal. But everywhere you go, it's the party line. Native Americans use birch bark baskets to haul the dirt. They use primitive hose, 1 bucket at a time. 390,000 tons of earth, okay? If I have a 30-pound bucket of dirt, and I'm one man, you know how many buckets that is? It's 26 million buckets. 26 million buckets of earth to make Poverty Point. And we've never even been able to talk about compaction. You know, it's just not dumping dirt. How do you compact the soil? There's one mound, it's called the Graves Creek Mound, where they dug into it, and there was actually a museum inside the mound. And what they realized is they didn't need to corbel it up or brace up the interior of the mound, because the compaction of the soil was so tight that it just sat there. It didn't cave in. That's a matter of historical record. How do you do that? And one of the things that we're trying to do is get a soil engineer to one of these sites and have him drill down and get a core sample and do a compaction test. In other words, if you don't have the ability to do it, then you don't have the ability to do it. You see where all this is going? To me, it's absolutely fascinating, because it's the fingerprints of a supernatural. And no one knows. They make up names like Adena, the Hopewell, the Mississippian cultures. These are names invented by the archaeologists. They have no idea what these people call themselves. They have no idea who actually built Cahokia. No idea who actually built the Serpent Mound. No idea who built the Great Circle Mound. None. They have no idea at all. Look at this. This is Poverty Point. Look at the advanced geometry. See the isosceles triangles? Look at the precision of the way it's aligned to the equinoxes. I mean, how is that done in antiquity? How do you, and you remember, you can't see this from the ground. How the heck do you do this? Thousands of years ago. I mean, we've got transits and satellite stuff, and you can plot it on paper. But how do you make a glyph like this where the mathematics is absolutely precise? How do you do that? How do you do that? This is Fort Ancient. Fort Ancient, when we got out of the car with Fritz Zimmerman, Peggy and I and Fritz, and I'm looking around at this and I'm going, you have got to be kidding me. If you've never been there, it's about 3 miles of earthworks. And they call it Fort Ancient, but it's not a fort. There are, we believe, 66 gates in this structure. And some of these mounds are 20 feet tall, some even taller than that, and they go for 3 miles. The amount of dirt in Fort Ancient exceeds 500,000 tons. In fact, you'll hear in a few minutes that if you were to deconstruct the mounds, put them in dump trucks, you'd have 200 miles of dump trucks end to end. 200 miles of dump trucks. You see where I'm going with this? It's not adding up. And this is only one site. So you've got thousands of mounds in Ohio. You've got mounds up and down the Mississippi, some almost as large as Fort Ancient. You're trying to tell me that all these people did all day long was create mounds? Something doesn't add up. Here's a picture of what Fort Ancient looked like about 100 years ago. Here's another shot of it. And another. Gives you an idea. Look at the people. Look at the size of the mound. And these, again, at Fort Ancient, are aligned astronomically. Okay, watch this. This is the docent who's talking about how it was done. This is the prevailing paradigm. Watch the reporter's face when, and we need audio on this, guys. We need audio. Watch the reporter's face when he holds up the hoe made out of a scapula, shoulder bone of a deer. Watch her face. Just look at her eyes, and the face is like, what? Here we go. Need some-
I'm standing on a National Historic Landmark that's over 2,000 years old. And Jack, you're going to kind of tell me it's a little bit about our Indian heritage.
Exactly.
I'm Cherokee, you're a little bit Shawnee.
Shawnee tradition, Cherokee heritage.
Yeah, so I'm excited to kind of learn a little bit about my heritage, but I'm in a garden, so what's going on here?
Well, this garden depicts crops that were grown 2,000 and 1,000 years ago
Thank you.
by the Hopewell cultural people. And they were very simple, complex horticulturalists. They did not have corn, did not have beans. They would have grown things that we would consider to be weeds today. Amaranth, goosefoot, knotweed. We do have sunflower and squash and gourds. And
Okay.
we also have native tobacco that is growing. And when all this was built, they used very simple tools. And I can
you go.
hand this to you.
Yeah.
We have the shoulder blade, or excuse me, the clamshell hoe.
Okay.
that is
Clamshell
here.
hoe.
Now what's this used for?
This would be used for gardening,
Watch the face.
as well as creating 18,000
Not
feet
buying
of
it.
earth walls here at Fort Ancient.
And that's sturdy enough to do something with.
They would have had a little bit more sturdier, but they would have gone through a lot of clamshells.
Okay.
Watch this.
And then also we have
lot of
the deer
clamshells.
shoulder blade. The way the deer shoulder blade would have been inserted into the shaft and then wrapped with rawhide of that animal. Again, look how flimsy it is.
Yeah, I was
They
gonna
would
say.
go through a lot of bone tools and a lot of shoulder blades of deer and elk. and
I mean, it gets better. Here he is again, and this is where he talks about the 200. This is what cracks me up. When you just show this clip to people like yourself, who are not archaeologists, not trained professionals, right? You all sit there and do the same thing that we do. We just laugh at it because the whole thing is absurd. This guy's trying to tell they have to go through a lot of deer. Well, who's killing the deer? Who's skinning the thing? You know, who's drying out the scapula? And we actually made one of these things. They're extremely flimsy. They would break very quickly. So a lot of, well, how's this working out for you, pal? Watch what he says here.
So now, Fort Ancient, it's a 2,000-year-old prehistoric earthwork site. We're on the short list for World Heritage recognition right
Lucky you.
now, which means that we are going to be considered for a global destination for world travelers. But Fort Ancient itself is the largest and best preserved hilltop enclosure in the United States, 245 feet above the river, and we are enclosed by over 18,000 feet of earth walls.
18,000
To give you an
feet.
understanding, 1, 2, 3 earth walls. Those are the 3 earth walls right there. So we're at the very tip of the iceberg. So Fort Ancient, again, hilltop enclosure, 18,000 feet of earth walls, built 2,000 years ago by people that we call the Hopewell cultural people. They would have used nothing more than the shoulder bones of deer and elk, split elk antler, clamshell hoes, digging sticks. Placing the soil
Digging
into
sticks.
baskets that we've demonstrated would have held no more than about 35 to 40 pounds of soil. Well, how do we know that? Well, we've taken a trench through an earth wall right at State Route 350 and found actual basket loading of soil. So to figure out volume, you take your tape measure, measure the length of the stain, the depth of the stain, give those measurements to somebody who got better than straight C's in high school general math. That was me, yeah. And it gives you volume. There is an estimated 553,000 cubic yards of soil at this site. Now, what's that mean to you guys?
Here we go.
Absolutely nothing.
It's strategic protection.
And again, we are not a fort. We are a prehistoric church. But 553,000 cubic yards of soil. If we were to tear apart all of the earth walls, all 18,000 feet, and put them into dump trucks, each dump truck holding between 15 and 20 tons of soil, and park it at the Jeremiah Morrow Bridge on Interstate 71, which is about 1.5 miles away from here. Start parking the dump trucks end for end. You will end up 15 miles from downtown Cleveland, 200 miles away.
So you got 200 miles of dump trucks. 200 miles of dump trucks. 200 miles of dump trucks, end to end, filled with dirt. And we're supposed to believe that these people use this stuff, use that little hoe right there, right? So when we go to these places, the first thing I ask, well, has anyone actually made a primitive hoe and gone out and see just how much dirt they can actually do with this? And the answer, well, we haven't done that, LA, but we're pretty sure that they did this. Watch. This is from the film.
We were curious to see how an ancient flint hoe would actually work in the soil around Poverty Point. We hired a flint maker to create a replica of the hoe, and after procuring a fit laborer, headed out into the field to see how much dirt could be dug, collected, and hauled to the mound site.
My name is Rick Woodward. I'm an archaeologist, and I'm working with Spiral of Life here near Poverty Point. We are doing some time volume tests, some experiments, how much time it takes to move a certain amount of soil. We wanted to do that to see how the mounds were built and the time factor that it would take. I wanted to describe this hoe a little bit so you can get a good idea of the instrument that they used. As you can see, it's beveled on each side, which would have called bifacing. They bifaced this piece of flint. Then it was fitted into this handle where it was pitch, and you can't see the pitch, but inside of these wrappings, there's a dark resin pitch that would have acted as a glue to hold this in. Then it would have been wrapped in rawhide. The rawhide would have been wet so that when it shrank, it would have held this novaculite head in this handle, and they would have been able to use it. It's very tough. It's a very rugged instrument, and I wanted to thank the Mr. Epperson, who actually did this exact replica. But this is the tool that they would have used, and this tool would have been used for over 6,000 years. Then the next thing we're going to do is take that soil that we've dug out of the hole, and we're going to put it into a vessel, and we're going to time that operation to see how much time it takes to do that.
And you got to remember that
once we get that done,
in antiquity,
we're going to take that bucket and we're going to walk a specific measured distance that would have been very close to the distance that they would have had to walk to carry this soil to the spot where the mound was going to be built.
And you have to remember that in antiquity, they either have birch bark baskets
then
or
the
deer
soil
hide,
would have been dumped
and no shovels. Check this out. Okay, we're doing pretty good, aren't we, guys? I'm seeing a mound here. Yes, sirree. Just a matter of time before we build Cahokia.
It would have been packed down.
So it's like ridiculous amount of time, and it's over 26 million buckets. 26 to build one mound, to build this particular one.
And we timed that operation.
So because of lack of time here, I got to move on. So in the state of Ohio, this gives you an idea of just how many mounds there are just in Ohio alone. There are thousands of mounds all through the United States. And this begs the question, there aren't enough people there to do this. Something else is going on. And you remember, let's say you've got 100 people in a village. So let's say half are male and half are female. So now you got 50 men. Because the females are doing the gardening and tanning and stuff like that. The men are out hunting. They're not going down to the Five and Dime or to Sam's Club to pick up chicken for the evening meal. So somebody's got to feed these guys who were doing this. Plus, in Ohio, for instance, you can't dig in the earth for basically 4 or 5 months out of the year because it's frozen, right? So out of the 50 people, let's say you've got 25 men that are men, and then you've got boys who can't do anything. So out of a 25, you're trying to tell me 25 guys are out doing this. Who's supporting them? Well, you got to cut that number at least, by 30, 40%, because somebody's got to be providing the meat here. No one's bringing them sandwiches from Subway at lunch. I mean, it's not working that way. So the whole thing begins to collapse. The whole narrative. If it was one mound, I get it, but it's thousands and thousands of mounds all throughout the United States. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And when Native Americans come into a place, they say, it was here when we got here. We don't know who built these. It was here when we got here. This is one of the mummies, known as the elongated skull, found in a mound in Pennsylvania. We know from the historical record that 8, 9, 10, 12 footers were dug up in the turn of a century, between the 19th and the 20th century. They were shipped off to the Smithsonian Institute, never to be seen again. Never to be seen again. And of course, if you ask, they just laugh at you. Oh, there is no such thing as giants. Talk to any archaeologist. And yet, every Native American tribe from Maine to California talk about the same thing. Large, very tall, red-headed, six-finger giants that the tribes had to fight in order to get the land. They were cannibalistic, they were sexually deviant. Every single tribe has a memory of that, but somehow they don't remember building the mounds. So who are we to believe? First Nations oral tradition or what the academics are telling us happened? They're directing the narrative to fit their paradigm, where Native Americans say, no, we didn't do this, the giants built them. They don't call them the Nephilim, they just call them the giants. And they say the giants were the offspring of the sky people. So there's definitely a connection. Who were the sky gods? Who were the sky people? Fallen angels, in my opinion. Moving on. This is Native American petroglyphs that we visited to in New Mexico. Look at the little guy on the right. Look at the big guy on the left. When Pastor Curtis sent me this and we went to the site, he just went, I can't believe this. He says, I've lived on the reservation all my life and I've never seen this petroglyph before. So we went there, and there's a little guy on the right fighting a very large guy on the left. The traditions are true. The oral traditions about the giants are absolutely true. This is Robert Mirabal, who does this wonderful pageant called Stiltwalker. And he talks about the giants. And he says, his opening line is they say a long time ago that there were giants in the land. And then he mirrors Genesis 6, when the sky gods came down and took the women and had children by them. I mean, he basically, and I interviewed him. And that interview is on the Trail of the Nephilim. So something is going on here. This is a painting of a group of natives capturing and killing a giant in Mexico. It's everywhere. And the reason why they don't talk about it, because it points back to the validity of the biblical prophetic narrative. It points back to a supernatural worldview. And the powers that be do not want you and me to understand that. So giants in North America, most of you have seen this, but we redid it again, and some of you haven't, and we're in the process of, because we lost everything in the fire, we're now going to print On the Trail of the Nephilim 1, On the Trail 2, together along with the DNA evidence. It's like 700 pages, and that'll be available in about a month. So there's Ralph Glidden. Ralph Glidden was an archaeologist in California. In front of him is a large skeleton in situ, and we stand Ralph up, we stand the giant up, we put them together, 8 foot 9 inches tall. We dumbed it down to 8'6". And what happened was when we did this is real photographic proof, some of the only photographic proof actually on the planet. There's a 6-finger giant. Count the fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the thumb is behind the upper arm. And you can see the thumb on the other hand, because it fell off, and you can see it. It's like right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that would be on that side. There is no thumb there. And we also believe this was about a 9-foot or 2. So we went back to the museum, the Kelly and I Museum, where I found these photographs. What's wrong with this picture? And why would the museum do this? And the reason why I bring this up is because this is in a museum, and they have deliberately redacted the photo to fit their narrative. This is proof of, and I'll get to more proof in just a second. This is proof of the way the game is played. They deliberately obfuscate, which is the same as lying, in my opinion. So they redacted the giant out of the picture. We have this gentleman on who talked about the bias in academia. And what happened was, this guy was a scientist, he's a microscopist, he's down at California University, Mark Armitage is his name, and he goes to a place called Hell Creek, it's up in Montana, with a team of people. It took him like 3 or 4 years to get the money to do this thing. And he's looking for dinosaur fossils, and he finds this gigantic Triceratops horn the last day. He brings it back to his lab, cuts the thing open, and begins to look under a scanning electron microscope, going down thousands of times to see what there is. He finds soft tissue in the Triceratops horn. That's not supposed to be there. Okay, we get that. He publishes the finding in a secular paper. Doesn't talk about creationism, doesn't talk about the God of the Bible. All he does is present his facts. Here's what I found. Hey, I got a Triceratops horn, I cut it open, I got some material, I looked inside, I found soft tissue, it's not supposed to be there. People called, we can't publish that paper. Oh my gosh. In other words, just like our DNA finding with the Paracas skulls, which showed a Middle Eastern / European origin of the elongated Paracas skulls, no one is attacking the evidence. They're just attacking us. Oh, it's contaminated. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. Go down and do your own stinking research and tell me what you find. Quit, bagging on us when you haven't done anything except sit in the comfort of your own living room and point a finger and tell us that we're wrong. Just like all these armchair critics with Mark Armitage, who, lambasted this guy. Soft tissue in a dinosaur bone. The movie Expelled, no intelligence allowed. Ben Stein drills in on this. Absolutely. No intelligence is allowed. Anything that goes against the prevailing Darwinian paradigm, bam, is met with great force. Look, I could go on this for the next half an hour, but I only got 37 minutes, so I got to continue. And that prevailing paradigm is right there, that somehow mankind decided to get up and start walking, but we look like chimpanzees, and we evolved over billions of years into Homo sapiens, just like all the animals. They were very simple cell animals, and then somehow they just, all this spontaneous combustion, creation happened, and poof, we had the animal kingdom. But let me ask you something. Why is it that there's not one species on the planet now, not one, show me one, just any one, and don't bring the duck-billed platypus, that's just leftover parts. So God is creating a DNA, the deoxyribonucleic double helix of life, which is the building blocks of all life, which points back to a creator, because that's who did it, and everything reproduces, what does the Bible say, according to its kind? But the Darwinists don't like that. No, that didn't happen that way. The fish decided I'm tired of swimming around. I want to walk on land. So it grew some legs and poof, it became a giraffe. Look, you made 2 giraffes, you don't get a porpoise. You made 2 porpoises, you don't get a hummingbird. You made 2 hummingbirds together, you don't get a chimpanzee, and on it goes. So this is what's at stake here. And we're pushing back against this juggernaut, against this Goliath of the academic and the scientific community, and we will not back down. Giant bones in the mounds. They're everywhere. Strange skeletons found. These are newspaper clippings. And these guys aren't trying to sell papers. They're just trying to be sensationalistic and sell papers. Oh, really? So every paper from Maine to California is doing exactly the same thing. Writing all this stuff just to sell papers? Or are they reporting actually what they're finding? They're reporting what they're finding, in my opinion. Look at this bas-relief. This is over in the Middle East. That guy on the left, he's a giant. And he's an Amorite. Look at the little guys in front of him. There's that picture again, the petroglyph. Check this out. Nephilim 1, the book. 28-pound axe head.
We got that.
That's it.
Well, this is the first casting.
Yeah, that's the one. And this is, what's great about this, I wrote about this On the Trail of a Nephilim. This is the Nephilim lance that we discovered. It's made of bronze. We went to one particular lab. We'll be able to tell you exactly where the copper came from, yada, yada, yada. Took them over a month and a half and $2,500. And when we walked in, the lab technician had a PR person, and she had to run everything through the PR person before they talked to us. And we couldn't take any photographs. We got her on the record. She basically just stated that this material could be found anywhere in modernity. Well, where was it from? Well, we don't know. She would not, it was unbelievable. So we took it to another lab. The guy's a Christian. And guess what he found? That the isotopes, again, scanning electron microscope, we took a sample, brought it in. The isotopes show Greece, England, and Spain. Hello, what's a bronze artifact like this doing over in Michigan, which is where it was found? And we know that people over here did not get into the bronze culture. Native Americans did not make bronze. And the copper, this is another subject of one of our films, there are copper mines up in Michigan. Guess what? Thousands of tons of copper have gone missing, and no one knows where it went. Someone went into those copper mines and mined that copper and brought it where? No one knows. But we know that this artifact, which was found in Michigan, is showing isotopes that are found in England, Spain, and Greece. That's not supposed to be there. So this is a teaser, because the film isn't out yet. Mathematical Mysteries of the Moundbuilders. First of all, these sites like America's Stonehenge, the Great Circle Mound, and other sites are built on an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. So why do we care? Because in order to do an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle, someone has to stand there like this every time the moon comes up and chart it, which means you need some kind of a writing utensil and some sort of a way to compile the data. Where's that? It's not there. It's not there. And yet, America's Stonehenge, Cahokia, Poverty Point, the Great Circle Mound, the Octagon Mound, all built on an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. And guess what? Almost every single site in Europe, the same thing, 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. Why? Where's that knowledge coming from? It all goes back to the dragon. It all goes back to the fallen one. This is really complex stuff. And then when you build things like this, now I want to explain this diagram. Check out the Octagon Mound here, and this is the Great Circle Mound. In antiquity, it was a 3-mile square, which this site encompassed. And you only can see this stuff from the air. And when you go to the center of each of these sites, Geller Hill, the Great Circle Mound, and the Octagon Mound, you wind up with a perfect isosceles triangle. How do you do that in antiquity? You can't. See where I'm going with this? We are looking literally, just like when you go to Saxiwa Mine and I go, touch the wall, you're touching the fingerprints of a supernatural. Men did not do this. Someone else did. Who is the prince of the power of the air? Who is the prince of this earth? The dragon. So, Archaeological Atlas of Ohio, there were the sites again. Here's the Great Circle Mound. Notice the houses in the background. It's a little over 1,200 feet in diameter, and there is a moat in the interior of it. It's a henge. Look at the cars. Look how big this thing is. When you're in it, the plaza is dead level. And when you're in it, you're not even sure what the heck you're looking at. It's only when you fly the drone 800 feet above, which is what I did there, does the whole circle really come into view. And Todd Willis, we hired an engineer, multidiscipline. I mean, why didn't the archaeologists do that? Why didn't they hire a surveyor, an engineer, to go and look at this stuff and tell us how was it done? And Todd Willis comes on the record.
Todd Willis is walking in the bottom of the moat of the Great Circle Mound. This gives us a perspective of what an incredible engineering accomplishment this is.
From the film.
Are we supposed to believe that primitive tools were used to create this amazing edifice? Or perhaps another explanation is in order?
We did a survey of the area using GPS, the elevations of the moat, all the way around the interior of this, different angle points through here. We found the moat to be fairly level, within 6 inches to a foot in most areas, all the way around. The only way they could have made it that level would have been to use water. I mean, today we would use a transit or a level and a level rod to grade something like this out, create elevations like this. So the only other thing you could have used for that time period would have been water. Water, obviously, from the gravitational pull is all, the same elevation all the way around. You could have used that to excavate to the right depth that you want.
So we hired Todd, and he has no dog in the hunt. No dog in the hunt. And we go, hey, Todd, how much is it going to cost to survey the circle mound? We want to see how level the interior of the moat is. Within 6 inches to a foot, and that thing's a couple of thousand years old, that easily could be accounted for just slough going in. But basically, it's dead level. 1,200 feet, it's dead level. And he's talking about ancients bringing in a water to the site. Well, how did they do that? It's not like, we'll just get some PVC pipe and we'll pipe it in LA. They don't have any of that. So it becomes, and the further he got into this, he started to realize that we're looking at something that doesn't makes no sense at all. Fingerprints of a supernatural. And you can see him right there. He's standing at the bottom of the moat. Look at both sides. Look how perfect it is. And think of that moat and the sides of those walls, thousands of years old. And the dirt is compacted so tight that there's no erosion. How does that work? How does that work? And again, one of the tests that we want to do, which as far as we know, no one has ever done, just like as far as we know, how many surveyors have actually surveyed the bottom of the moat. We may be the first people to do that too, I don't know. In other words, they have a paradigm and they stick with it, and they never waver from it. Native Americans built this with these primitive tools. And then when you start drilling into it, well, how do you make that level? Well, they had to use water. Well, how did they get the water there? And what you're telling me is you're digging down, and then that looks pretty good, guys, and you're bringing some water, and you wait, and are you kidding me? 1,200 feet? I mean, it's one thing if we were making a small little area. 1,200 feet of moat that goes around the circle. Remember how big the circle was? 1,200 feet? And the circumference is, a lot. So you've got all this water or material, and we believe it was filled with water when it was used ceremonially. And of course, when Native Americans got there, they said, we don't know who built it. It was here when we got here. The site was abandoned, and that's why we're on the trail. Again, going back and look at the picture, the octagon mound, which is up the top left corner, and the sides are not equal. It's one thing to do an equal octagon. It's another thing to make the sides of the octagon unequal. So it's an unequal octagon. And when you see this, there's a shot from the air. Look at the houses in the back. There's the octagon. Remember, the first time I went in there, it's a golf course. And I'm standing in this thing and I'm going, I have no idea. It's bigger than this room, much, much bigger than this room, much bigger than this room. And I'm standing inside it going like, what is it? I know it's an octagon, but I have no idea what it is I'm looking at. And this is the problem. How do you build something like this if you can't see what you're doing? Who is the prince of the power of the air? How come the lines are perfectly straight? How come it's an unequal octagon? And there's advanced trigonometry that's used here. Check this out.
Okay, I'm looking at the North American circle mound and the octagon mound. What I see is a fairly complex geometric construction. To construct something like this requires a knowledge of geometry. It requires a knowledge of angles, of bisecting angles, of adding angles, subtracting angles. I think there was a good knowledge of geometry that went behind the design of this. I don't know of any Native American tribes that were using geometry 2,000 years ago. This obviously was done by someone who either had sophisticated equipment or who had a solid understanding of geometric concepts. There's just no way. If I had given an assignment, construct two geometric figures and with some type of symmetry and handed in, and a student gave me something like this on a piece of paper, and I said, well, tell me how you produce these angles. And they said, oh, I just kind of measured here and I sketched this out. That would be sufficient evidence to say the student was cheating. I see no way it happened intuitively or by chance.
So what we have here is advanced geometry, advanced trigonometry that are employed in the site. It's one thing to take a piece of paper and, a compass and a ruler and figure out the angles. It's another thing to make an earthen glyph like this where the lines are absolutely dead straight and it's an unequal octagon, and then they correlate to other sites precisely forming an equilateral triangle. It's deliberate. Native Americans, with all due respect to First Nation people, did not travel in trigonometry. Europeans, 3,000 years ago, did not travel in trigonometry. So people will go, that's a racist statement. No, it's not. It's just a statement of fact. Statement of fact. Europeans didn't have it, and Native Americans didn't have it when these things were built. And people think like 3,000 years ago. So where does the trigonometry come from? Where does the advanced knowledge come from? How do you construct something like this if you can't see what it is that you're building? How would you check your work? You can't check your work. So it's enigmatic. And it's right here in the United States. It's like hidden in plain sight. But because they control the narrative, they'll tell you what to think. This is why we're pushing back. Because what it does is it gets everybody awakened to a different reality, a different way of looking things. The fingerprints of the supernatural are all around us, all around us. They were here, and they left stuff like this for us to see. Nork's advanced mathematics. So here's the octagon mound, and this is where it goes off the rails for me. I'll take a minute because I'm down to 24 minutes. The circle here is 1,050 feet. The circle is part of the octagon mound. That's the octagon mound. So if you take this square and you square the circle, you wind up, each side of the square is 1,050 feet inside the octagon mound. How did they possibly do that? How could you possibly do that? Again, on paper, you'd be hard-pressed. If you didn't know geometry, you wouldn't be able to just draw it. It looks easy, but you try to draw it on a piece of paper where you've got to measure the angles because it's an octagon. You've got to know what the sides of and if it's an unequal octagon, it's not all the same angle. So it becomes more complex. And then you've got a circle, and then you square the circle, and then it's mind-boggling. And it's one thing to do it on paper. If I asked you, if you didn't know geometry and I said, draw that out, I'll give you a compass and a ruler and say, go for it. Good luck. And a protractor so you can figure out the angles. Good luck. You'd have to know trigonometry. You'd have to know precisely how each leg of the octagon, how long it would be, what the diameter of the circle. So when you nested the square within the octagon, you would essentially come up with exactly the same measurement, 1,050 feet. It's not by chance. This is, in my opinion, the fingerprints of the supernatural. And then when you add the Nephilim, and that these sites are highly charged Nephilim sites like Henry Groover, the Serpent Mound, this stuff, when you get into the idea that human sacrifice was practiced at many of these sites, it's mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling. They were here in the Americas, and that should send shivers up and down our spine, because if they were here once, are they coming back again? You tell me. And Satan and his angels were cast down. Woe to the inhabitants of earth. Check this out.
Just like in the first show, we mentioned this.
Let me go back. Let me do a proper introduction. This is Chief Joseph for everyone. Is a Tiano peace chief from the Arawak tribe, and I've known Chief Joseph for a number of years. He's a close friend. He was in our Watcher series. He's predominantly heavily featured in this whole series because what he brings to the table is, and he's about, I think, a couple of credits short of getting his archaeological degree. So he brings a really unique perspective as a Native American peace chief to this whole thing. And when I watch his countenance, when he starts talking about the idea that the modern day white settlers are promulgating a view which is antithetical to what the Shawnee chief, Chief Wallace, and other Native Americans say. So who do we believe? The fact that a bunch of bozos put the Shawnee built this, or do we go back to the Shawnee chief and hear what the Shawnee have to say about it? It's a managed agenda. And this managed agenda, if I can digress just for a second, and I will, this managed agenda extends not only from what our kids learn. I was talking to Brian and Audrey about the schools now in Canada where the textbooks, I'm not making this up, this is so Orwellian, the textbooks that are given to the kids are collected at the end of the day. The kids don't take them back. They do all their homework online. So the parents never get to see what's in the textbooks. This is brainwashing our children, just like the liberal left, and this has nothing to do with the presentation. But you know what? Where's the mystery of iniquity coming from? This is just one piece of the puzzle. The way they doctor all this stuff and create a narrative, a false narrative, and then people swallow the Kool-Aid and drink the Kool-Aid. And you look at the deep state in our government and the political machinations that's gone on, and I mean, I could go for an hour on this easily, with Trump and the deep state and everything else that's happened. I mean, why is this important? I'm not saying you spend all your time on this, but you know about it. Because when you go to a site like this, you can begin to push back and give the biblical prophetic narrative, give what we say happened, not what you're telling us to think. And that's what's at stake. So listen to what Chief Joseph says.
Just like in the first show, we mentioned the Shawnee chief, who on record said, we didn't build these things. But yet, if you go up to these areas that are under the Shawnee jurisdiction of protection, so where these mounds and things are, and it says that the Shawnee built them. You know, so there's a false narrative that's already being put in place, even when the people themselves say it wasn't us. So we're not talking about just 200 or 300 years ago, white settlers asking the natives, hey, who built this, and them saying we don't know, we didn't do it. We're talking 10, 15 years ago. Modern day white settlers asking,
watch his face.
Hey, who built these? And the chief of a nation says, it wasn't us. But yet history still says, we're going to say it was you. So there's a great injustice being done there because that's purposely being deceitful. And it's also dishonoring and disrespecting the First Nations people and saying that our oral tradition doesn't matter if it doesn't fit the narrative of their historical paradigm.
So this is at the very end of the first film, and we did a compilation of the drone footage, and I think this will speak volumes. And I'll call out each of these sites, but I think you'll find this really interesting. Give it some volume. That's Newark, Ohio. Great Circle Mound. That's Fritz Zimmerman standing on the seat mound. Ohio. Fort Ancient. The Grave Creek Mound, West Virginia. This is a rock mound in Ohio on private property in a hidden area. That's part of the Octagon Mound Complex, Newark, Ohio. This is called the Junction Group. Huge circles, huge, look at the size of the cars. Huge circles. It's a mound in a cornfield on private property in Newark, Ohio. Never been excavated. What I love about Here the Watchmen is a lot of different people with different ministries in the body of Messiah, the body of Christ, come together like this. And you know, what I do isn't for everybody, and let's say what, you know, any of the other speakers, we all have our little niches, and these are the things that we do. But what we do is arm you, the people, with the truth, so you can go out and make a difference. And I hope in some small way this morning, I was able to impact you. And this is just the tip of the iceberg because it's global. They were here and they set up shop and human sacrifice was practiced. And it's done over and over and over again. So, thanks for listening. God bless you guys. Thank you.